We are now on to part two of this crazy article that Mike Silver put out on The Athletic, detailing the big changes that have come for the San Francisco 49ers organizationally at the top when it comes to the decision makers and how things come together. And so, part one was detailing the changes, and I'll link that in the description. I'm not going to go over it again. It was a long video, so if you want to start from the beginning, go there. This is going to discuss, or this video is going to discuss how part one impacts Brock Purdy and his contract negotiation as written by Mike Silver. And we're going to throw our 2 cents into the mix as well. But again, if you haven't read this article and you're not familiar with kind of the conversation that's been percolating on social media right now, I want to give you the full context of it so you can make your own opinions on it. So let's get right into it, shall we? So, again, this is a continuation. We've already done analysis on part one. Part two starts out, and we'll start right here in the article. As good as the 49ers have been on the field since 2019, they've appeared strangely vulnerable in the negotiating realm. In addition to Samuel 3 years ago, the Ayuk last summer, tight end George Kittle in 2020, Bosa in 2023, and Trent Williams in 2024, all signed deals in August or later. That sapped organizational energy. Samuel and Bosa each later admitted that the disputes had taken a personal toll that they attributed in part to subpar seasons in 2022 and 2023, respectively. All of which brings us to the current state of the franchise and the prospect of a drawn out, contentious negotiation with Brock Purdy. Now, I know because I engage with hundreds of thousands of 49er fans um, consistently across all platforms. It doesn't matter if it's YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook, TikTok. I deal with a lot of fans and I see a lot of comments. So I see all their opinions and kind of feel I have a strong gauge of the fan voice, or at least the majority voice, at least that is shared online. And I would say that most fans believed that this Brock Purdy negotiation was going to be smooth, believed it was going to be quick, fast, to the point. It was going to be a different scenario than anything that we had seen up until this point, as kind of discussed in this article with Ayuk, Kittle, Trent Williams, Bosa. It doesn't matter. You name it. You name a top tier player for the San Francisco 49ers, they have gone through a contentious negotiation with the team. So many people believed it was going to be different for Brock Purdy. In fact, with what we're gathering from this article, it actually appears it's going to be the most difficult one of them all. And we'll continue to read, and it will kind of paint a picture of why that is the likely outcome. Selected with this 262nd and final pick of the 2022 draft, Purdy, as per the NFL's rookie wage scale, has yet to be adequately compensated for his unlikely emergence as a top flight quarterback. Now that he's finally eligible for an extension, he'll want one commensurate with his accomplishment. Purdy finished fourth in the MVP voting in 2023 and lost the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes in overtime. His numbers dipped last season when McCaffrey, Williams, and other key players were sidelined for significant stretches. A deal should be doable, but it's easy to see how things could get messy. The 49ers can freely proclaim to the world that Purdy remains under contract. He's due to earn $5.2 million in 2025 and could theoretically be franchised in each of the following 2 seasons. Conversely, Purdy's camp can float the possibility of a holdout, something that could potentially hijack the 2025 offseason in a matter that would make last year Ayuk saga look like a warm up act. You're starting to see. You're starting to see the potential. Again, for me and anyone who's followed along with me on this channel has heard me talk about this situation. I have actually pushed back on the notion that this was going to be a smooth negotiation. I have been very pessimistic. For being an optimistic person when it comes to football, I have been very pessimistic about the negotiation starting in season and just quietly being like, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's cakewalk. They're going to get it done. We'll see. We'll see." Yeah, there's a lot of ranges of outcomes here. I mentioned Brock Purdy's exit interview where he identified a basically invisible deadline of OTAs and mandatory minicamp of wanting to get a deal done by then because that's when the season starts for them and how they start rolling into 2025 and all of that stuff. The reason why Purdy said that is because that is the first inflection point of a potential hold out or a hold in is not showing up to mandatory minicamp and or OTAs. And unfortunately, with negotiations, even if you wanted to go and be a part of the team and be out there, if they're really at odds in contracts, I don't think he can. He might hold in. That might be a different situation. I could see that being a likely outcome. But just like the 49ers leverage in this situation is saying you're under contract, you can play this next year on your rookie deal for 5.2 and the next 2 years on a franchise tag. Well, Purdy's leverage is not showing up. And if your quarterback isn't going to show up, that's exactly what Silver is talking about. How this is like a warm up act, or Ayuk's holdout would be like a warm up act, like basically saying like if you thought Ayuk's holdout was bad, just imagine if it happens with the quarterback. So I think you're starting to see how things could, just like Silver says, get messy. He goes on to say, will it come to that? Shanahan and Lynch clearly hope it won't. They prefer to lock up their quarterback for QB1 for years to come and focus on other matters. For example, can they convince Bosa's big brother Joey, who was recently released by the Los Angeles Chargers, to come to the Niners as a bookend edge rusher at a relative discount? Can they get one of Shanahan's favorite players, soon to be free agent linebacker Dre Greenlaw, to rebuff other suitors and return on a 1-year prove it deal after an injury impacted season? Can they get an extension done with Kittle, who's heading into the final year of his contract? That makes sense for both sides. In past years, as he decided whether to dole out a massive signing bonus to Purdy, York might have been swayed by his coaches and GM's conviction. This time, I expect the owner and his chief negotiator, executive vice president of football operations, Parag Marate, to be as ruthless as they deem appropriate. And I believe that this is the most important part in regards to the Brock Purdy contract negotiation forecast in the entire article. Because based on part one, with the changes being had of them basically stripping Kyle Shanahan of final say on contracts, he doesn't now have that ability anymore. And that is now solely in the hands of Parag and Jed. Whereas Kyle and John would come in at the end and say, we got to get this done, as detailed by Kyle Shanahan running upstairs, stopping the trade of Brandon Ayuk to the Pittsburgh Steelers and paying him $30 million per year. That was Kyle's power up until this point. What they're saying is because of that, this massive shift in the front office and how they go about the power dynamic that changes the dynamic of the negotiation with Brock Purdy, because where they would stall, it was Kyle who would bridge the gap to get it done. Now you remove that bridge out of it, and now what do you have? You just have a gap. And that gap can prove to be very challenging to close without someone championing, messing that word up, but to be able to push the two sides together. If that doesn't exist, then there might be a variable that we haven't witnessed under the Kyle and John regime, and that's where this whole situation gets very interesting based on this article that Mike Silver put out. It goes on to say Purdy may be one of the most stunning success stories in the history of the sport, but he also represents something deeper. A year before drafting Purdy, Shanahan and Lynch used 3 first-round picks to land their presumptive franchise quarterback, Trey Lance, with the number 3 selection. It proved to be an unmitigated disaster that could have set the franchise back years. And when Shanahan sidled up to York after a 2022 training camp practice and explained, I think our third string quarterback is our best quarterback, York's first impulse was not to celebrate his coach's assessment of Brock Purdy. One thing owners don't love, and this is a quote, one thing owners don't love to hear when they've invested money and or draft picks into people is that the last pick of the draft is the guy that we think is the best, York recalled in February 2024. That's genuinely not great news. Now I understand, York's point. Yes, that's genuinely not great news to hear that the guy that you spent multiple first round draft picks for is being outgunned by Mr. Irrelevant. That's not how you drew it up. That's not the point of moving up to first. And I remember Kyle Shanahan talking about this, and I really think that this also was a point of contention in the front office as well that probably stems into some of these changes too, because Trey Lance is a bust. Doesn't matter how you want to conceptualize it or rationalize it, he is a bust. Arguably one of the biggest busts in NFL history based on the compensation sunk into him, arguably going down as one of the worst pre-draft trades of all time. And thankfully, the San Francisco 49ers land on Brock Purdy, and he saves their bacon. I spoke to John Gruden at the Super Bowl, and he gave me the phenomenal quote of they should be building a statue of Brock Purdy in San Francisco because he saved their bacon, talking about Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, because without Brock Purdy right now, the San Francisco 49ers are likely in shambles, depending on because who's their quarterback. At least that's what it seems as it stands right now. The article goes on to say another thing owners don't love, shelling out millions of dollars to players who don't produce, especially when those decisions are arguably impacted by impulse and emotion. Oh boy. What does that mean? That's a direct correlation to Kyle Shanahan. Basically saying that the decisions to shell out these contracts based on the person who had the final say, which was Shanahan, was due to impulse and emotion. And based on the part 1 that we covered, Kyle Shanahan is no longer in that position of power to make those decisions now based on impulse and emotion. And so, wow, it's a crazy article. And he says, let's put it this way. If you are an owner and your head coach feels compelled to sprint upstairs to get you to commit $120 million to a player prone to throwing tantrums over the color of his practice shorts, you hope that coach is built like Andy Reid or that your general manager's office door has a really strong deadbolt. Guys, this is a crazy article. It really is because there let's look at it this way. Let's say it's true. Let's say that nothing about this is fabricated. This is all accurate information, and that's that's crazy because what does that mean? Does that mean the 49ers are going to take a different approach to Brock Purdy's negotiation? Hence all the numbers coming out of him getting 45 million, the entire game plan of selling to Brock. You have your rookie year and two franchises after that, and playing hardball that way in the media. This is, you know, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because, as I mentioned throughout this video, I had been warning of like like I'm not saying these specific changes, but essentially the fact that just because Brock Purdy is, Brock Purdy, that doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion that he's just going to get paid all this money. So I think based on both part one and part two of this little video series that I put together on this, I mean, this is a phenomenal article by Mike Silver. And I think it clearly indicates that there has been a massive power shift, and that power shift will have a direct impact on Brock Purdy getting paid. And the question now becomes, and what it appears to be is, I think what becomes more real. Is there a potential chance Brock Purdy gets traded? If they don't come to terms, what are they going to do? If he threatens a holdout, what are they going to do? Well, what did they do with Brandon Ayuk the last time that they came to a head? They started shopping him. They almost traded him to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who stopped the trade? Kyle Shanahan. Who's not in a position to stop any of those moves currently, at least is what this article dictates. Kyle Shanahan. So what does that mean for Brock? I don't know what that means for Brock. I don't know. I have, I'm a ranges of outcome person. I look at everything through multiple lenses, through different perspectives, through different, angles, from the front office angle, Kyle angle, John angle, Prague angle, Jed angle, Brock angle, fan angle, reporter angle. Like, there's so many different ways to look at this to be able to try to put yourself in those specific shoes, and it changes the dynamic of the situation based on that perception or circumstance. And when you put yourself into this particular range of outcome, I think more than ever, a potential chance that something that that could happen that we didn't anticipate is more real than ever. Now, I'm not going to say like what that is because I don't know, but I would say my advice to you, and this is now where I put my fan hat on of the 49ers. My advice to you is be prepared for anything. Do not put yourself into a corner of believing there's only one outcome, and it's Brock getting paid, because that's how you will get hurt as a fan. That's how your fandom will be damaged. Understand the situation, understand the multiple ranges of outcomes, and just be prepared for anything, because just like Mike Silver said, this could get messy in a hurry. And if Kyle Shanahan isn't there to bridge that gap between player and contract negotiator, anything can happen. So let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. I'm really curious, but let me know in the comments below. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.